Welcome to the Ebb and Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jenelle Tremblett, and I'm a firm believer that even when life doesn't go as planned, it is taking you exactly where you're meant to be. On this podcast, I'm here to help you finally release control of what you think you want and begin to just trust in the ebbs and flows of life. Each week, I will show you how to build that positive mindset, radiate with self-confidence, and cultivate an unshakable resilience. Let me prove to you that even when life ebbs, you will glow. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 109 of the Ebb and Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jenelle Tremblett, and as always, I'm so happy that you are here. This podcast is all about interviewing everyday people on life's ups and downs. It can be as big and traumatic as cancer or an illness of a child or divorce, or it can be something as what we may call smaller traumas of friendship breakups, getting fired, maybe just having a lot of just self-worth issues. We talk about everything on this podcast. And if you've never listened to the podcast before, welcome. I get a lot of feedback from everyone saying that I tend to take a lot of big topics and lighten them up a little bit. The conversation doesn't feel heavy. It's a lot more storytelling, as if you were kind of having wine with a friend who kind of just went through something or maybe went through something in the past and is now kind of retelling the tale. So sometimes my titles can be a little bit like, I don't know if I have it in me to listen to that heavy of a topic, but I'm sure you can hear the style of my voice. It's not a heavy podcast at all. It's very heart to heart, human to human, and I think you'll get that from when you listen to this episode. So today's episode is with my guest, Mandy Alexis, and her story is all about being a functioning cocaine addict for 16 years, but now she has been 3 years clean. So Mandy's relationship with drugs started way before that, though. At age 12, she tried weed for the first time. By age 14 to 15, she was experimenting with mushrooms and acid, and by age of 16, ecstasy was added to the list. And of course, all of these mixed with alcohol. Now, however, today, Mandy has completely reinvented herself. Her mind, body, heart, and soul is now a successful entrepreneur and has recently moved to Nicaragua. Mandy is here today to share her story about essentially how she got from there to here. So a lot of the topics that we talk about in today's episode is how she got kind of caught up in drugs from the first place. I share some of my own stories with Mandy where, I started drinking at age 13. So there's no surprise to me how you get involved in it. We talk about Mandy's growing up with an alcoholic father, times in her life she's been in toxic relationships. And she talks a lot about just the paranoia, the distrust, and just trauma on trauma on trauma. And how everything kind of intertwines together. Then we get to the other side of the episode where we chat about how Mandy has changed and reinvented herself. She links a lot of her changes around mindset and brain health using a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditation. So if you've never heard of him before, definitely Google or YouTube him. He's very famous in this space of brain health and meditation and life coaching, kind of like self-development. So Mandy used a lot of his practices to really jumpstart her healing. We also talk about how changing up her environment and attracting in healthier relationships definitely changed her life. And eventually we talk about how she ended up moving to Nicaragua and what she has coming up in the future while living there. If you have ever experienced any troubles with drugs and alcohol, or maybe have someone in your life that struggles with that, I think today's episode will be a great one for you. So I hope you enjoy the episode and Mandy's story. And if you do, share it with a friend who will also gain value from it as well. Anyways, wherever you are today, whatever time of day you are listening to this, I hope you are having the best day and enjoy the episode. Bye. Mandy, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
I'm super excited because for anyone who doesn't know, you're originally from Canada, right?
Yes, I am.
Oh, I love it. Yes. And when we first chatted, I was telling you I was in Winnipeg recently. And I made a not so good of a joke, but basically, I'm not surprised that you got involved in drugs. I've been downtown Winnipeg not much going on there.
It just sort of happened, right? Like it's, I'm going to just try this thing and then, it just escalates from there, right? Really. Yeah.
All my Winnipeg friends are gonna be like, stop talking crap about Winnipeg. It's all in fun and jest. But I feel like I can make fun of it a little bit because I come from such a small town where it's so easy to get started with alcohol and drugs at a very young age. And similar to you, you started smoking weed at 12. I started drinking at age 13.
Yeah.
And I never stopped. Like, it was just so easy to access that at 13, like I wasn't really involved in any like extracurriculars. There's not much to do. There's not really movie theaters or anything. So like, what else do you do in a small town,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like Winnipeg has everything. I don't know. It was just the path. Like it was presented. My friends had older siblings. So they were already doing, 3-4 years older. And so we were watching them do it. It's in the house. Like it was easy for us to have access to it. And like, we're watching, our role models partake. So, yeah.
And especially when you always look at older siblings of either your older siblings or your friend's older siblings as so much cooler. So, and it's such a classic, like, bad thing to get caught up in, but it's like whatever older high school kids are doing, you want to do as well. We've all been there.
Yeah, for sure. And, we see them just like having such a good time with it, right? Like we don't see the laziness of it, or like, we don't know how it's affecting their mind. We see them laughing, goofing off, like having a good, like, right, having fun. And that's what, like, what starts the intriguingness of it. Right.
I found drinking at that young of an age. I mean, at that young of an age, like I didn't have any responsibilities. So I could drink on a Friday, Saturday night with my friends outside. And like the next day I'm like, okay, I'm just going to hang out with my friends again. There was no repercussions, I guess. As there is now. Like there's nothing worse than being hungover these days because as an adult, I have so many more responsibilities.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can remember as a teenager as well. Basically, we would just spend the weekend at someone's house, right? So like we're party all Friday, then we like sleep in on the Saturday. We all make breakfast together, hungover, and then we like do it all over again. And it was just, very normal and okay. Because like you said, we weren't worrying about having to like get to work or to take care of other things, right? Like,
I'm curious though, at 12, so like your first introduction to like alcohol or drugs, it was weed at 12 years old, right?
Yes. Yeah.
How did you, I feel like you're alluding to it a little bit, but like, how do you get yourself in a situation at 12 years old to be around drugs?
Yeah. Like I had said, like my friends, like older siblings had been doing it and we were watching them do it. And I just remember like, we used to always meet at the Tot Lot. That was our park. And we went there one day, like after school, and my friends like had taken a joint from their older brothers. And they're like, let's do this. Let's try it. And I was curious, right? Like I was like, yeah, cool. Let's see what happens. And then it actually didn't affect me the first time, but I would watch my friends laughing and having fun. And I'm like, I want to feel what they're feeling. Like they can't stop laughing. So I kept like smoking weed. And then finally, I think it was the third time, like it hit me. And I was like, oh, wow. Like, and yeah, we were at a school dance and it was just like, it's first of all, being in that atmosphere of the dance, right? With the lights and like, you kind of like, you're awake, like there are parents there, but they're not your parents and like all that stuff. And it was a blast, right? Like we were having a great time. Right.
Mm-hmm. When I think back, how old are you now?
38.
38. Okay. So I'm 29 and I think back, even just thinking like age 12 seems so young. Like that's a child. But when I was 12, 13, 14, like I didn't feel that much younger than how I feel today. Like I thought I knew everything. Did you feel that way?
Well, yeah, I definitely know I feel different now than I did at 12. But at 12, in the moments, I definitely felt like I knew more than I did, or that I was more like I felt more of a mature, like that, that I didn't feel like 12, but I have a niece who's 12. And when I think of like her smoking weed and like going to shortly be like experimenting with other drugs, I'm like, absolutely not.
Right.
Right. So it is wild to think, because yes, back then at that age, I did feel like, oh, this makes sense right now. Like, I'm not too young, but then, like there is no way if my niece was starting to go in that direction, I'd be like, you're definitely not old enough. Right. Yeah.
Where were your parents during this time? And keep in mind, I'm asking you these questions knowing I was into the same kind of stuff at that age. I never got down the drug route. I definitely could have, though. It was always around me, but I just never had a curiosity for it. I always liked alcohol. Where are everyone's parents? Like, especially the houses that you're staying at on the weekends, like where are the parents? I know where my friends' parents were, and I know how we managed to get away with everything. Sometimes we didn't, as my parents know. But yeah, like where were your parents? Where were all your friends' parents at the time?
Yeah. So there were some like friends' parents that didn't care. Like they were like, kind of like, oh, we'd rather you do it in our house than out on the street and whatever. So, I mean, like they cared, but they were just like, you're going to do it. Might as well do it here. My dad was actually like, my mom and dad were split up. So my dad was one of those parents where he was like, I'm not going to buy you like the drugs. I'm not going to buy you the alcohol. But if you're in my house doing it, I'd rather you be doing it in the house than at the park and something bad happen or whatever. So we did have a few places that were like fine with us experimenting in that sense. And then as we got like older to like, 15, 16, 17, we would go to whoever's houses their parents were like at the cabin. Cause like at that age, you're like, they're leaving you behind, right? That you don't want to go. So we had these empty houses then, right? Like, and that's how we made it happen. And don't get me wrong, I had gotten into trouble, like my mom would find out and she would call other moms and like someone would come pick us up and, because we're not allowed to sleep at boys' houses. Like before cell phones, like I didn't have a cell phone back then. We used to call, I remember I would call from my friend's house, like a girl's house. My mom would *69 the number because I don't know if remember that. Call back, make sure we're there, and then we'd leave and go to the guy's house, so there were ways around it, which I'm sure every generation finds, like how to do it. I don't know if it's a little harder now with the whole find your phone thing, if you can reroute that or not, but yeah, we found our ways to get away with experimenting and exploring in those fields. So yeah.
Any parents that are listening right now that might have like teenagers or soon to be teenagers, they are flipping out. And what I would say to them, it's like, you can go ahead and be a helicopter parent, but it's only going to get worse. It's only going to be worse. Like you said, every generation is curious about experimenting with drugs and alcohol. And regardless of what you do to try to stop it, we and they will find a way around it. And we both know, like we both were into it.
Yeah, we definitely, I mean, we wanted to party, we wanted to be with our friends, and like you said, we were going to find a way to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
at what point though does it start? I mean, everyone always says weed is the gateway drug. Like, what is your thoughts on that?
To be honest, I feel like trauma is the gateway to getting into that type of lifestyle with it taking over. Because I do have some friends that they literally did just experiment and then they were fine. Right. And, I grew up with an alcoholic father and he was like in and out of my life. I saw, like, he never beat me, but I saw violence in the sense that he would destroy things in the house, like punching walls and smashing things, and just the anger and rage and him not showing up when he said he was going to. And then, just so as a child, like you're, I don't know if you're aware of this fact, but like from 0 to 7, your brain is literally a sponge. So you're absorbing all this stuff and you have no way to filter it out. So you don't even know that it's affecting you until like way later. So, if you're going down these paths of experimenting, but then you're realizing it's making you like feel a certain way, then you get to escape this other reality, like that can be really dangerous, right? So I strongly believe that it's the trauma because you're trying to escape something, and it's a difference when you're just literally experimenting and you come from a healthier home.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking back to the friends I hung out with that I was experimenting with at 12, 13, 14 years old. And yeah, I I've never to this day have done cocaine. Like I'm around it every now and then at parties, right? Like now I was around it again this past weekend, but I have never cared to try it. But I think about the friends that it wasn't just alcohol, it wasn't just weed. They were definitely a little bit more experimenting. And yeah, they came from some households where, yeah, I'm sure they have some deep rooted trauma. And it's really sad. And then, but you're right though, that is where it starts.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, for me too, like I didn't admit or see that it was the trauma until like years later. Right. And I had always told myself I was never going to touch cocaine. I was like, nope. Like I saw what it had done to like my older sister and stuff. So, and I was like, no. And then one day I just decided to try it. I was like, well, like everyone else is trying it. Maybe it's not that bad. Everyone's having a good time. I'll have it under control. I'll be different. Right. And I loved it, which is probably like not the best thing, right? But I enjoyed the high. It was just, it kind of like, it evens you out and you get this, you can kind of go longer in your night. And, I was having these like really cool conversations because people are like, like fucked up, I liked it. And because I was able to maintain like a good life in a sense, like on the outside, I still was working, I was volunteering, I was going to family functions. I had opened up a business during this time. So literally functioning, but I was destroying my brain and my body and not healing from anything that I had been carrying since a child. Right. And then with adding of the drugs, anything that was going to be happening from that point on, I was just kind of layering on the things because, something bad happens. Oh, let's just go out and get drunk and do cocaine and like not really deal with it. Like, you have a cry and you talk about it, but you're not really dealing with it at the core. But we did that with like good things too. Let's go celebrate. Let's go and have some drinks and do some lines. And so it was just, there was always a reason to go do it. Right. And then like literally one day I was just like, I was starting to realize how much it was affecting my relationships and just like how my brain was working. And I was like, no, like enough is enough.
Do you think because you were so high functioning from the outside, people are like, yeah, sure, she parties a lot and goes out a lot, but she's still working. She still has shelter. She still has relationships. She's starting a business. Guess it can't be that bad. Do you think people around you aren't really intervening as much because they think it's okay?
Yes, totally, for sure. Because, I had other family members where you could see that their habits were wrecking their lives,
Yeah.
like externally and internally. But because I held it together so well, it didn't look like it was as bad as it was, or no one knew how much I was doing, right? Because and if they even wanted to admit that I was doing it in the first place, like they could have just been like, oh, she just drinks a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like I'm still holding a job. I'm still getting to work in the mornings. And so how is anyone to know that I'm up all night? Right.
Isn't that so interesting though, where as long as based on society standards, you're still succeeding, but it's like people aren't as concerned as much with how it's destroying you physically underneath or mentally or emotionally, but because on the outside, you got it all together, quote unquote.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't even know how much I mean, obviously my close friends knew, but my family, I don't know how much they actually knew. Right. And it is pretty crazy. And society is always, it's starting to make the change now, but how, they say like, if you have a broken arm, like you take time and you heal that, right? But because you can't see the brokenness in your brain or in your heart, it's not as like important, like to take care of, which I mean, we both know is incorrect. Yeah. And I do see that there is a shift happening, but definitely it's not fully there yet.
Being addicted to cocaine for 16 years is a long time. And cocaine is a very expensive addiction, as I know. How did that affect you financially? first of all?
Well, so when I first started out, I was serving. And then actually what happened was, because I was like the go-to girl, like people would always ask me like, oh, can you get us some? Can you get us some? I actually started dealing. And so I think it was about 4 or 5 years I was dealing for, and I never asked for it. Like literally the dealer was like, oh, hey, why don't you start carrying an 8-ball and then your habit will be paid for. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Right. And then like any business, I guess it grew. And there was for about 1.5 to 2 years where I actually didn't work. Like I was making a lot of money. I lived a very different life in the sense where I lived in one of the nicest apartments on a very like expensive street. I had a separate apartment with fake names, and we kept like our safe there with all the drugs. We paid cash under the table for it. We had this backstory of like, you know, my boyfriend at the time worked at CN, and I didn't like sleeping alone. So I didn't stay there often. So it didn't look weird to the other roommates or to the other units that we weren't there that often. And yeah, we could go on trips whenever we wanted to. We bought all the newest things, like it to me in that sense. Right. And 5 years. But then it was when I decided I wanted to open up a business, and I was like, I can't have the two worlds collide.
Why?
I didn't want my business to be associated with my drug dealing. I didn't want people to think it was a front. I didn't want anybody from that world coming to my place of business and like wanting to pick up. Like I was like, nope, I want this completely legit. You know, like one of my, like the bosses had said they'd fund it. And I was like, absolutely not. Like, I do not want these things together. So, well, I was like writing my business plan and getting all that kind of stuff. I let go of that world so that there'd be a good gap between the two worlds, and went back to serving. And it was weird because then I was like, I got a budget. Like, what is that?
Yeah. You can't live a high lifestyle anymore. And it's hard to go back from that.
Yeah. So I did, I was serving. So obviously the tips are always really good and stuff. And still financially, I was fine in the sense of, you know, because I was always making money every day, and I would just take extra shifts if I was like, I want to party extra hard this weekend kind of thing or whatever. But I never stopped. Like I slowed down, but I never stopped in that whole time. Like even when I opened the business, like I was still
you were using, just not dealing as much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You make it sound very simple though, like the clean break and almost like the transition. Dealing drugs, like I just know how I would feel. Aren't you always like kind of watching your back and worried about getting caught and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So during the time that I was dealing, like we actually set up schedules with people, and, you know, there were certain times we wouldn't work. We'd only go to places like a certain amount of times in a night. Obviously there was always that little bit of, you know, we'd look in our rear view mirror all the time. Right. But I don't know. I guess obviously wasn't afraid enough not to do it, but I just really tried to be careful. There was one like scare that I had where I was like threatened by somebody because I was on their turf. And so that was scary, but I told like my boss, and he just dealt with it. I don't know what that meant. I didn't ask questions, but
you don't want to know.
No, but yeah, like it was, other than that one time, I never felt like super afraid. And I think I got out like actually like right at the right time. There was a lot of shit that happened like within the next year between that industry and those people.
In terms of like violence and whatnot, and getting caught?
Just getting caught, and a little bit of like competition, other people stepping in. And it was, I don't know, divine timing for me. Like I do believe that the universe definitely has my back in the sense of giving me these big nudges of when to make these shifts, because like it could have been a completely different story for me, you know?
Completely different. And that's why I feel like your story in particular is a bit of an anomaly. Like I said, being addicted, like you said, you were a functioning addict. And a lot of the times I always say the best drug dealers are the ones that don't actually do the drugs, but you were managing to do both.
Yeah. It was pretty intense. And like, it's actually very wild for me to think that was me, like, you know. And so now it's been approximately 3.5 years that I've been clean. And then 16 years of my life, I was this other version, but that other version just seems so faded. Like, obviously I remember, but I can feel it and I do have visuals of it, but it seems like seems a longer portion of my life, even though it's not even close. Right. It's so interesting to me how in this short amount of time, I have changed so much and done so much work that like I can't, like, the visual of who I used to be is so faded. Like, it's there, but
Shocking
like,
to me.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how much growth you can do in such a short time and how much you can change as a person. So many people are so stuck on the idea that people can't change. And I do not agree with that at all. You can't change a person unless they want to change themselves. So, for instance, if one of your friends or family members all of a sudden felt that you needed an intervention, was like, you need to stop doing drugs, you need to change, you need to find yourself, you would have been like, hell no. But the moment you decide you want to, you said 3.5 years later, the person that you were and that life that you had, it seems like a fake movie.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. It's very crazy to me. I definitely put in the work, right?
Yeah.
Like when I had decided, it did take me a few tries to actually, like, I'd go a couple months and then I'd fumble, and then I'd go a few more months and then I'd fumble. But what had happened in my shift was that, like, I really had enough. So I, like, and I held myself accountable. Like, friends would say to me, like, oh, it's okay, like, you've gone a few months. And I was like, hell no, it's not okay. Because
That's
if
not
it was
enough.
okay, then I would continue down this path. So I made sure to hold myself accountable. Like, I was gentle but firm, like, and I was like, no, like, this is not what I want. And I would really analyze what I was doing. And okay, so you know what? I thought I was ready to go out and have a couple drinks. Clearly not, so I would step back, and I had to have very hard conversations with people and tell them, like, I won't be able to be in your life if this is how our friendship continues and stuff.
Yeah.
And I literally for months, I couldn't do any of the things that I love to do, right? Concerts, bowling, dinners out with, like,
because they were all associated with some type of drugs or alcohol.
Everything. So it was like, I had one friend who, she would call me up and be like, want to go for ice cream? And I was like, yes, I do. Yeah, thank you. So, but yeah, I mean, I stuck to it, and, I did the inner work. Like, I went to Costa Rica a few times during my healing, and that definitely did help me also, changing up my environment completely.
Getting away from it all. Yeah.
Yeah. And new experiences, new people, new atmosphere, and really going within. Like, I started doing trauma work, like father wound work, mindset work. Like, Dr. Joe Dispenza was a huge leap forward for me. I did his Rewired series, and I listened to it over and over and over again so that I could really understand how the brain and, like, the mind works, and then use his practices to change my conditioning, to change how I had been for forever, basically,
I'm curious, for the audience's sake, what was, as I'm sure you've been asked multiple times, what was the straw that broke the camel's back where you thought, I need to get clean?
Okay. So so basically there was a series of events. The first big thing was that I was in this very, very toxic relationship where, when we met,
always the case, hey?
Right? Yeah. We both had said, oh, we want to stop partying. We want to stop partying. But we just got worse together. Yeah. We just got way worse.
Enabled each other.
Yeah. Because it was like, well, we're in it together and we'll stop one day together. And he went way harder than I did, and he kind of had a mental break, and yeah, he switched a switch, and it really broke my heart, and kind of, he disappeared for a while. It was bad. And after that, I realized, if I ever want to have healthy relationships, like, I need to be healthy, because clearly I won't attract something that I'm not, right? So that was my first big, like, I gotta change shit up. So I started, switching habits and finding new community and things. And like I said, like I did stumble back a few times, but I was determined to keep pushing forward. Then the next kind of thing that happened was I met someone else, and he was not a partier. So that was great for me. And I was still healing. So there was a lot going on with me, and just the way he was so patient, the way he loved me, like how our, like, just, I don't know, this love was different than anything I had ever received before. And he had a son. And I was like, if I'm going to be the stepmom that I want to be and that this kid deserves, like, I have to say goodbye to this life forever. And that was like my deciding factor. Like, it was this child. And I think a lot of that played from what I had as a father, like growing up. And I was like, there is no way I want to be anything close to that for a child that I will potentially be helping raise. Me and this gentleman aren't together anymore, but I believe he played his role, and his son played his role. And now moving forward, I continued with the healing and continued with the inner work for me. And yeah, those were my big moments of like, you can do this. You need to do this. I want to do this.
This person, as you said, played a big role in you getting sober and getting out of this addiction phase. Are there other people in your life that played big roles?
Yeah, I have, like, my best friend back in Canada, like, she completely came onto that side with me. Like, she stopped partying. She's the one who would be like, oh, let's go for ice cream. Her and I lived together while I was going through a lot of the first parts of my healing. And because I was discovering who I was sober, there was a lot of shit that was coming up. And I realized like how much of like an empath I am and how sensitive I am to energies. And because I had been hiding that for years, right? Just numbing myself.
You're numbing it. Yeah.
Right. And so discovering that was like, oh my God, it was a whirlwind all on its own, because I was like, what is happening? Why do I feel this way? What is going on here? And because it was her that I was living with, and because of the way she loves and understands and just patient, she was so amazing with me in that sense, allowing me to discover who I was sober, and like being understanding and patient and loving, and having really deep and confusing talks with me when I needed to, and also giving me my space when I needed it. And if it wasn't for her and the way she loved me and the way she supported me, like, that could have gone a very different way if I was in a situation where someone wasn't as caring and I was going through this stuff. So yeah, she gets a lot of credit as well.
What made you want to go to Costa Rica? Like, why Costa Rica, and how did that help you get through this journey?
It's so crazy. Like I had said, I feel like the universe really has had my back with its divine timing, because I had actually had the trip planned to Costa Rica before when I realized about the stepmom that I wanted to be. Like, the trip was already planned. And then it was like this moment happened for me, and I was leaving in 2 weeks. So it was really like, the divine timing. Like, I wanted to go to Costa Rica. I'd heard so many good things about it, and the beauty and the warmth. And I was like, I need to get away from Winterpeg and all that stuff. Right. But I went for a whole summer. So I went for the whole summer, and the timing, like I said, was already set up for me without me realizing that I was going to have this other big epiphany. So then I got away for 2 months, right at the beginning of the last time I had done it. So that really did help in my healing and pushed me forward and everything like that. But like, I have always been someone who needed to be by the beach and be in that kind of weather. And I had met someone who lived in Costa Rica, a girl who used to live in Winnipeg, and we just hit it off. So I was going to visit her, and it just So like I said, that divine timing of and then I fell in love with Costa Rica and just kept going back. But every time I went back, it opened up more healing opportunities, more exploring opportunities, more like, it's got that spiritual edge to it as well, Costa Rica, right? So
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's great. And then also for me, like, discovering this like empathic part of me and this energy sensitive part, being able to be outside all the time really helped with me being able to like stay in my energy and not absorb everybody else's, because that was very challenging for me when I was first figuring out who I am sober, you know?
Seriously though. But I mean, the ocean and some nature and some sloths could make you feel a lot better.
Exactly. Yeah. The pura vida lifestyle, like you
Yeah.
just slow right down. Yeah.
I'm curious a little bit more about the Joe Dispenza stuff. So for anyone who doesn't know, Joe Dispenza, how would you describe it? It's like self-development world, but he is very much about the brain science of like
So
rewiring your brain.
he's a neuroscientist, but
Yeah.
then he also like has that quantum aspect to him as well, right? The spiritual aspect where like he himself was in an accident where they said that he was never going to walk again, right? And then he went to all these doctors and he was like, I'm not going to believe this.
Yeah,
And
like I
then
don't subscribe to what you're saying.
Yeah. And so he did the work on himself and he healed himself and then was like, okay, there's something to this, and started deeper diving into the effects of our brains and how much our thoughts control our body and what we actually can achieve. For many, many years, I've always been fascinated with the mind, because even as a druggie, like I was always fascinated with the mind because of the powerful tool and like how it works.
And you watched how drugs altered it.
Yeah. And like I did actually do a lot of research during my healing on how cocaine affects you, how long it takes to like heal your brain and stuff like that. But even just like watching humans and being an observer of humans, like how different everyone is, and how, because of like the way our brains may function, or like what experiences we're taking into our brain and how we're filtering it through, is how we see the world or how we act in the world. Right. So it's always been fascinating to me. So when I saw this Joe Dispenza meditation on like how to go more within, it just kind of led me. I did a little more research on him and discovered his series on the Gaia app. So so then that list like blew me up, like expanded me completely. And I literally, at the beginning of my journey, I would listen to his 13 episodes over and over and over again at work, in the car, as I was falling asleep. Like I was like, I need this ingrained in me and I need to start doing these practices, because with the addictions and with the way my life was, like I had realized I had developed, a lot of paranoia, a lot of distrust, like a lot of like, just like
trauma on trauma.
Yeah. And like unworthiness and things like that. And I was like, okay, like I can change the way I am thinking, then change how I'm behaving. Right. And so I wanted that so badly for myself. I was like, I do not want to feel this way. I don't want to attract like insecure and untrustworthy and unhealthy relationships. But I knew it all started with me. So and then, once I discovered more and more about how powerful our thoughts are and our brains are, I was like, and then because I now have done it, it's because, and I'm like, yes, it is so powerful. Like you can be thinking unhealthy thoughts and negative thoughts and you will become sick, and
100%.
Yeah. But if you can change and be more positive, you'll be healthy. Like I barely get sick. Like I can't, and if I do get sick, it's like for a day, I'm like, I just need to rest. And majority of the time it's an energy overload. It's just like I've done
You're just tired.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So, but I strongly like, there is proof after proof after proof now, if you like how much our brains affect our body and how it operates and stuff. So
100%. I'm curious, over the past 3.5 years of fighting the addiction and being sober, do you ever miss it, that life?
No.
Good.
Yeah.
No slip ups, no like wondering what if, or
no, because
good.
it was so, it was destroying me. Right. And, I had so many unhealthy attachments because of the drugs, and I was suffering internally over and over and over again, even though like on the outside, like I was happy, but I was still suffering because I wasn't dealing with anything. Right. So I would never want to go back. I can't say I regret what my life was, because, my mess is now my message. I now have this experience and the story to share with people and to show them that change is possible. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be that someone's addicted to drugs or alcohol, but any type of change, like anxiety, stress, job, we have the power to change whatever it is in our life and the way we think about ourselves and life. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't want to change that, but definitely not going back.
I think about all the people in my life that I worry has a bigger problem with alcohol or drugs. And I can make pretty easily correlations on kind of why they're numbing themselves. And at what point, from an outsider standpoint of being the friend, at what point do I intervene and mention things from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have alcoholic father, brother. I've had friends that have gone down the hole, and I have been very vocal with them about that they can change. I want them to change, that I'm worried. And like we had said, like you had mentioned in the beginning, unless someone wants to, right? But I think it's important to reach out in a loving, gentle way that, you are here for that support. You do, like, you can tell them in a loving way, in a gentle way, that you're seeing some, unhealthy things within their life, and you really are, care, and you want them to know that you're here and you want to help them if they want that help. Right. Because like some people just think that they're in it alone, and people don't mention things because they're like, don't want to, none of my business. Well, if you care about that person, it is your business, and you don't have to be a dick about how you approach it. Like, people want to feel loved and cared for and important, and that they matter. And not all the time people will have the confidence or the love for themselves to be able to take those steps towards healing. But if they know that there is someone there that loves them and wants to support them, that could be what they need to make those changes.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some people in my life that I genuinely worry. And it's like, as you said in this conversation, whether we're sad or we're happy, we can find a way to celebrate or commiserate with drugs and alcohol. And a lot of the times it's a social atmosphere. And I remember listening to one of your podcasts where like you were at a bowling alley doing drugs. And it's just like, why do we need to be doing drugs here? But it's just kind of, it's socially, that's kind of what it leads to a lot of the time. There's always a drink or always weed or always drugs around. But I think about those people in my life that I'm like, I worry. And I just hope I don't enable it at all,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's understandable. I mean, yeah, like I've already put my foot down with like my brother, like, don't call me if you've been drinking, don't have drinks around me, not for my sake, but for his sake. Like, I'm like, I don't want, that to be okay, because it's not okay. Like, it's not just a fun drink or two, right? So for me to be able to at least say, if you're with me, these are the situation, like, you can't be drunk, right? And just to be able to help him recognize a little bit and help him, push him to maybe go that one more day without a drink because he wants to talk to me, and always I send the message with love, like I have had some very firm conversations with my brother, but like never cruel, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I get that. I love what you said when I asked you the question, basically, how does your life look better now? And why did you need to go through all of those problems and traumas and experiences to be the person you are today? And I love what you said. You said, everything that I go through, experience, and so on makes me. I learn and grow from it so I can glow from it, which I love. You say, I'm better today because I choose to keep bettering myself even throughout my addiction. I was always working on something throughout the years. And I love that because it just as a reminder to everyone, it's like, I'm sure when you go through addiction and become sober, it is a daily, I don't want to say battle, but it's something that's top of mind for you every single day that you got to continue to work on, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me now, like the first year was definitely like very much making sure I stayed away from any type of situation that would like trigger me. Right.
Yeah.
But now, about like now 3.5 years in, I don't feel like I have to fight anything. Like I'm not,
You can
but
be
I'm
around it.
yeah, I could. I can like, and I can drink now and not worry that I'm gonna like, but I'm always still working on myself, right? And the difference now between like how I deal with life and issues is like I actually deal with it right away, right? Not like, oh no, like something's bothering me, like, oh, whatever, like let's just go have a drink and dance and forget about it and get high and stay up till 5 a.m. It's like, oh shit, something's bothering me. Let's meditate on this. Let's journal about this. Let's, go within and like go through the layers of what is it. And then I do like I have a healer, like an energy healer who I do like, it's kind of like a hypnosis type thing with, and we go to the roots of the problem. We check in and we see, is it a soul problem, a heart problem? Is it subconscious mind? Like I'm not just pushing it aside and then having fun and then letting it pile up. Right. So yeah, like I feel so much lighter. Like I wouldn't have been able to know that I was heavy before because that's just who I was. But after, going through all these transitions and the layering, yeah, I feel lighter. And I feel like it's important for people to know that they don't have to carry everything with them their whole lives. And they, it is possible to take the layers off. Right. And yeah, not to think about the whole package of all of the things, but start with one, right? Because we get overwhelmed and then that's how we, go backwards or, give up. Yeah.
Yeah. Trust me. I know I can find any reason to have a drink. Literally. I work in real estate full time, and I posted a story the other day, and I literally, the caption was, win or lose, we still get the booze. Cause it's like, if my clients don't get the offer or if we get the place, I will have a drink, and it's like, thankfully I'm not down that addictive road that I can handle that. It's kind of just like a jest, but it just goes to show, it's like, we live in a society where anything we do, we can link it to drugs and alcohol to add to it pain or happiness.
Yeah. Well, and also if you think about how booze is presented to us from a very young age in movies, TV shows, college kids or teen or, high school kids are doing it. They're the cool kids. They're having these awesome parties. Like they're fun. And then you see, sophisticated people sitting with their glass of wine and like martini or scotch, right? And it's very much programmed into us that alcohol is cool, does make you sophisticated, does make you sexy, does make you badass, like we don't even realize that's what like has been happening all our years. So then when we, one day wake up and we're addicted to alcohol, it's because we've been started to be programmed from a very young age that this is cool. This is the way it should be. Like this makes us this way. This means this, right? Yeah.
So true. So true. I didn't even think about it that way, but yeah, anything cool is linked to, especially alcohol and partying and having fun. Last question for you. What's next? What are you excited about coming up?
Well, I'm excited about a lot, but right now, actually, I just actually got this cool opportunity in Nicaragua to help co-manage a resort, a very nice resort. So I'm going to stick around Nicaragua for a while, and I'll be doing like their social media and event planning. And I'm actually in charge of helping with retreats, which is super in line for what I wanted to do next, was actually host retreats. So like this opportunity is just so in line with me being able to get to my next steps of putting on retreats to help get more information or give people a space to come and rejuvenate, relax. And then also I wanted to have a learning retreat where people can come and learn and practice all the different types of modalities that have helped me throughout my journey and come up with like healthy ways to be able to take care of themselves moving forward.
Do you think those retreats will be ready by this January? I gotta plan a trip for myself, and I would rather someone plan it for me.
Who knows? I mean, it could. I'll let you know, and I'll let you know soon.
Please. Mandy, for anyone who wants to connect with you further and learn more about your story, and maybe someone that's going through a similar journey that you've went through in the past and just kind of want someone to talk to about it, how can they connect with you?
So they can find me on Instagram or Facebook, and it's Mandy Alexis Motivation or my handle. Yeah.
And any last words of advice or encouragement for someone going through similar stuff that you've went through?
Yeah, just don't give up on yourself, and just know that if this is something you really want, you can achieve it. And I believe in you, even if you don't believe in yourself, because, sometimes you just need that encouragement from someone else, knowing that they are behind you on this journey as well.
Yeah, your story is one that a lot of people are familiar with, whether it's them that have experienced it or someone close to them in their life. And it just makes me so thankful and grateful that you were able to get out of it and it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And knowing that you have completely shifted transformed, I want to say, your life from what the life that you were living before is very inspirational. So I would just want to thank you so much for being here and just sharing your story. So thank you.
Yes. And thank you so much for having me on your show to share and to hopefully inspire others to go for the life that they want as well.
Trust me, you have. So thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Did you know that I'm not only a podcast host, but in my full-time career, I am a Toronto-based real estate agent. In 2021, I closed 100 deals. Yes, you heard that correctly, 100. So if you or someone you know is a busy professional looking to get into the Toronto real estate market and looking to work with a realtor who values your time, make sure to reach out to me and let's get connected. And in the meantime, we'll see you here back next week.